As you know, the gas markets, the international gas markets, is not yet existing. I mean that we have not yet a single market as we got for the oil, where transactions are made on the international levels. For the time being, there are 3 regional markets where we have 3 levels of prices. That's the situation. $4, for instance, for the US markets, $8 for the European markets, and nearly $10 for the Asian markets. We see that there is no arbitrage of prices yet. Although the international markets is developing, growing, and we see a globalization, a trend of globalization, more international transactions, and I do expect that in 10 years from now, we certainly will have a more fluid, more liquid international gas markets. So we are in a phase of transition where a process of globalization, liberalization are creating, disturbing, where we have also emerging countries such China and India increasing usually their consumption, and this of course makes new actors in the consumer side, also in the producer's side coming. Europe is a big market. Europe has differently than US, in Europe the domestic production is not enough to cover the whole consumption of the area. So Europe is dependent from foreign suppliers such Russia, Algeria, Qatar, Egypt, Norway, and this creates a singular situation. Although Europe launched a program of liberalization of the gas market in order to create a single market in Europe, this market is not yet functioning as a free market. There is a development of the so-called hubs, where there is exchange, a development of spot markets, but the massive supply of Europe is based yet on long-term contracts negotiated between producers and outside producers and big companies, importers of such a gas. So, in the past, this kind of contract was a sort of security for both producers and consumers, because the producers want to comfort, to guarantee their outlets, their exports, and the consumers and the buyers were trying through that contracts to have the assurance to get first all the volumes of gas needed at a certain prices which have to be competitive with other competitive energies on the European markets. So in Europe, things are growing very quickly. I do expect that it will be a phase of transition, of negotiations, of the imports and the exports between producers' country and importers' country in Europe. This negotiation will certainly be tough, but I think that they will find again the good formula in order to equilibrate, to make a balancing of the constraint and of the interests and of the concern of the two parties. This goes through cooperation, not only between companies. I think that the issue is enough important to call also for the support, political support of the government or authorities, as well to comfort, to create a good atmosphere. Because it's not, I don't think it's a field of competition and battling, because it's not needed for the development of the gas. And remember that gas is a clean source of energy compared to coal, for instance. One of the main consequences of this movement, this shift of the markets, going to new kind of markets such as the spot and the futures markets, is to create more uncertainties for the actors, for the supply and demand aspect. And these uncertainties are, unfortunately, the reason for higher volatility of prices. So if we get something for the future, we know that it is a higher volatility than in the past. Consumers and certainly sellers will have to live with a higher volatility. So this means that certainly with the regulation to protect consumers for such vital source of energy will be needed. I am sure that the free markets, complete free markets, led to speculation will not be good including for consumers. But for the sellers, it will create uncertainties, and this could make them, I mean about producers, to restrict their investment. And what the consequences in that case is that less investment create future difficulties in supply. And this is not good. So once again, here we have to regulate developing free markets. I think that prices have to be monitored for the consumers in order to not let too much speculation as we see in some other areas, let's say the US market, for instance. As far as the contracts are concerned, here also I think that we entered in the phase of renegotiations of some clauses, certainly to adapt the long-term take-or-pay contract with the new situations, with development of the spot markets, development of future markets, more actors, the need of competition in the European markets. But at the end of the day, I do think also that we need this kind of long-term contract in order to give the security for both parties, for consumers and buyers to get gas on a permanent, regular basis, and for the sellers to be sure that its market is guaranteed, and to let him to make the investment. As you know, this investment in the gas industry are very huge. It's a very capitalistic industry.